Hello everyone and welcome to the final building episode of the Dominion City series for Jurassic World Evolution 2. I've been building this massive city and this is basically the episode where the final parts come into the city and then it's gonna be, moments until disaster strikes. Right now what I'm working on is an idea I had to make a museum. So what I used as the centerpiece is an aviary because I really wanted to use that building again because it looks so different and nice. And I used my trademarked monorail structure around it to make a bigger building than that. I didn't really go into trying to give it an interior. I think if you're using mods, you definitely could do that. You can overlay some buildings in there to make it look a little bit more enclosed than I was able to do without mods. But yeah, so I didn't really went into that. I just put a couple of the viewing towers around it to close it off a little bit and sort of make that the entry points of the museum. And other than that, I just surrounded it a lot with the individually placeable trees to sort of hide the openness of the museum in question, and that's where I left it at. But you could definitely, if you are using mods, yeah, I would put some buildings in there. Also, of course, take path in there as well, and you can make it look even better from the inside. But I think especially from an aerial perspective, it looks pretty cool, and I think it's kind of a cool idea to have a museum over here. And of course, since it is a museum in a city that will eventually be overrun by dinosaurs, the irony wasn't lost on me by making it a natural prehistoric museum. So we put, of course, the Spinosaurus skeleton outside, and I also used some amber and stuff, and the torches to sort of set the mood, if you will. But this is for the dinosaurs that have gone extinct. Of course, the resurrected dinosaurs brought back from extinction, those are the ones that are going to be trampling through the city and killing innocent people. Yes, that is a thing that I'm looking forward to. I'll discuss it with my therapist. If you want some of those dinosaurs to be named after you, just leave a comment down below and I'll pick a couple of names at random to give to the dinosaurs, and maybe we will run into them in the final episode where all madness is going to hit. The section that I'm working on right now is like the fancy neighborhood, I'm not really, I guess the closest thing to what I can think of as a real world thing replica is Hollywood. But any sort of fancy area, gated community where the houses are way bigger than they need to be and the yards are way bigger than they need to be. That's sort of the idea here. I used the thick gray path as the road itself for the cars, and then I lined it with the cheap path as the sidewalks. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just using fences to cordon off like the yards, the lots that the houses are gonna be on. So I think in total, this entire section that we're looking at right here, on the south portion, it's just going to be 2 lots, and on the northern side, it's also just going to be 2 lots. So that's just, when you compare that to the suburbs, which I finished in the previous episodes, that is quite a difference. In the suburbs, we would have fit 10 lots on a space like this, but this is where the other half lives. And we'll get back to where the other half lives a little bit later. Right now, what I'm working on is the stone quarry. This is something I just really like to do when I'm building off on my own, in my own headspace, not really thinking about recording. I just hop from one place to another. So I went from creating those lots to now working on the stone quarry, and it was a really easy thing to do. But I actually think it looks quite nice, and it's a good space filler at the end of the day because the amount of buildings was really putting a strain on this park. I will definitely admit that. So we needed something else than more houses, or more replicas of houses, I should say. And I think this turned out pretty cool and also fit with the theme of this city very well. It's a more rural town, it's more worker village. And apparently some rich folks live there as well. I don't know. I didn't give it too much thought, and maybe neither should you. Otherwise, this is just all gonna come crumbling down like a stone quarry. Basically, all the stone quarry is a layered dent in the world, and I enhanced it with the terrain type. So I first used sand, and then I lined the edges with stone, and then later I also go in with well, there's a terrain type brush which is probably my favorite in this biome, and it's like a mix of sand and stones or pebbles, I suppose, and that combination gives it a really nice look, and it really just makes the edges of the stone quarry stand out. So I really like how that turned out. And then after that, it was just a case of adding like some equipment around the stone quarry. So I used stuff like the cranes and the mobile staff truck office things. I really don't know what they're called, and that's pretty obvious, I guess. And then adjacent to the stone quarry, I also made like a little logistical section, I suppose, where I don't know, equipment would get stored, stuff that's brought in and brought out, it would just go through there. There are some offices there, like a security checkpoint and whatnot. And that's sort of the idea there, to fill that space up a little bit as well. And also any excuse to use the containers and the cranes. I love the cranes. The cranes are cool. The cranes are like the best. But any excuse to use any of those DFW decorations that we have in the game now is good enough for me. I really love just getting into this level of detail. And there is a lot of detail in this park, and I really can't wait to show you that in like the final episode where we're gonna do a walkthrough through all of the dinosaur madness. I'm very much looking forward to sharing that with you, but I hope that you're also just getting a lot of building inspiration from seeing the process of me creating this city. Here we are at the second part of like the rich people neighborhood. I can't show you the build or the majority of the build from the other part, which is like just off to the screen on the right now. You can see that it's already close to finished. The recording program stopped recording at some point, and I didn't notice because the disk space was full. But instead of notifying me, he just stopped recording. So I don't have that footage, but this is another, like that empty plot over there. We're gonna do some more of the big lots over there, so you'll get the gist of that. And really, with regards to making these properties, it's the same as I did with the suburban neighborhood, but just on a larger scale, in the sense that conceptually they're all very similar. You know, it's a big building in a lot with some path and some trees and decorations to make it look as close to a home as we can with the tools we have in this game. And then it's just a case of trying to make every single one of them look a little bit different from the other ones. So you go with a different path layout, you mix the buildings up once in a while, and that sort of stuff, you know. So it's there's not much rhyme or reason to it. You just have to use your creativity a little bit to get a nice mix, because you don't want everything to look the same. I'm talking as if you're gonna build a city yourself. I'm not sure you are. I would definitely recommend it. I had a ton of fun with it, but I'm not really sure if any of you watching this are gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna take on a massive project like that. I'm gonna torture my PC for no good reason. If you are gonna build the city, or maybe you already have, then please leave a comment down below. And by the way, you guys are always welcome to come join the Evolution Square Discord and share your screenshots of what you've built in the game with, you know, the rest of this crazy park building path artist community. That'll be really awesome. The link for my Discord is in the description box down below, so we can get even weirder, essentially. Now, for the fancy neighborhoods, I like using a lot of fancy path, fancy fountains, and the hotels, I think, work really nice as a mansion-style home. So that's what I think I used most often. But the staff centers and the Jurassic World shelters also have a really nice modern architecture look to them, which would definitely be the most convincing as a big modern house for this type of idea that we're going for here. Now, this is one of my simplest and easiest to implement ideas, but also probably one of my favorites that I've done in this city, because this really is like a city thing, and it is a gas station. So it just branches off of one of the main roads in the city. It's like the main artery that connects the the fancy area to suburbia and downtown, the industrial section, all of that. So it's like a really important road within the city. It would see a lot of traffic normally, if dinosaurs hadn't taken over the world. And the flags over there, they mimic the gas pumps, the planters, because of course I love my planters, can never go wrong with a good planter. And then for the building, I chose the Jurassic tour building. Because the idea here is that where the tour would go through, that is actually the car wash. I thought that was kind of a I think that's a pretty cute idea. And again, I'm not using mods, so as you can see, I have to pull the path back quite a bit, or I'm getting that, that red notification that we all hate. If you are playing this game unmodded, you can really just have the path go through there as well, and then it would look really convincing as just the I don't know what you would call it, like the lane that goes into the car wash, which is, I don't know if this might be a very Dutch thing, might even be a super local thing, but a lot of the local gas stations, especially when they're in a city, so not like gas stations that are off the highway, but gas stations in a city usually also have a car wash. That might be a Dutch thing. I don't know, it just hit me that it might be a Dutch thing, but a lot of this is really just inspired by my own area, because that's the only thing I could go off of. The rich people houses, not so much. We don't have those here where I live. By the way, that little section that I just completely talked over, that was actually also, I think, one of my better ideas for the city. And not at all because I was lazy, but that house, that plot that I just did off to the left, that was like still under construction. I was quickly running out of ideas on how to make all of these properties look different. So I thought, you know what, it would make sense if one of these was still under construction. So I did place what would be the house, but then I just did a lot of sand and dirt around it and used, the crane and a container and stuff like that to make it look like a work site. And I think that turned out pretty well. I think it gives it a bit more character than just placing another hotel and more fancy path and stuff like that, as I'm doing right here, because I've done a lot of that. After a while, it was definitely a challenge to give every plot this sort of unique identity, to make it stand out from the rest. I think I fared okay, but it does expose the fact that we don't have that many variation in the decorations and in the path colors and in the buildings even and stuff like that. So after a while, I will say it became a little bit exhausting and I was ready to be done with this part. The same with Suburbia. So I guess my advice for you is, if you are crazy enough to also be building a city in Jurassic World Evolution 2, I would recommend that you do separate your city into different sections, as I have. Don't make a massive city that is just 90% suburbia. Really divide it into sections with a very different approach. So like I did, I have like suburbia and the rich people neighborhood, but I also have a downtown, I have an industrial area, I have a little bit of farm, I have the stone quarry, and that really just helps fill in the space without completely exhausting yourself on one single aesthetic, one single concept, because then it becomes really challenging to keep yourself inspired with. Let's still be honest, it's great that we have all of this decoration, but it is still limited and it can become very repetitive very quickly. So if you are going to build a city, you also don't need to put it on the biggest map. I think this is one of the biggest maps, but you can totally also use one of the smaller maps, make it a little bit easier on yourself and also easier on your PC to create something like this, and you don't run into that issue where you just want to be done with it after a while. if you're building a city as massive as mine and you're running into the issue where you're really struggling with your frame rate and the controls are just not responding properly, I really had a big issue, especially with the path tool and placing decorations. There was just such a big delay on everything that it became a real struggle to just place stuff and line things up. What I found really helped was closing the park, and the reason for that is because I think it wasn't even the guest AI. I thought it was guest AI, right? But as soon as you close the park, it's not like the guests magically disappear. It takes a while for the guests to sort of thin out until they're all gone, right? But as soon as I closed the park, I saw a big improvement. And I think the strain here that this park was dealing with was keeping up with all of the statistics of the many buildings that are in this park, quote unquote. Because as a city, it definitely has way more buildings than this game was anticipating to be put in a single save file, because usually when you're building a park, a lot of that space is allocated for dinosaur exhibits, so a lot of nature, which is a lot less stressful on the game's and your system's capacity, I guess. And because this is a city, there's not a lot of nature, it's mostly just a lot of buildings, but you know, the game's actually keeping track of everything, like the profits and how much it attracts a certain type of guest and doesn't attract another type of guest, all that sort of stuff. And I think even the customization feature, all of that stuff, I think really demands a lot of the game and of your system. So if you are building a city and you're running into the issue where your tools just aren't working properly, your dinosaurs are probably gonna freeze up. I had that when I first started releasing dinosaurs. I had a massive panic because they stopped moving. Like, all of them were frozen in space and time, and I panicked because I thought this is like the most detailed, complicated thing I've ever built, and I can't show it off the way I had intended. But closing the park fixed that. So if you're dealing with that yourself and you're experiencing that same panic, close your park, and that's really hopefully going to solve the issue. It did for me, at least. By the way, this is just some detail work that you're watching right now, and that really helps give the city its realism. Like, for example, over here, we're at the supermarket. So this is where you would park your shopping carts, your shopping trolleys, depending on where you are in the world, how you would call those. The rest of the build is really just me adding a lot of detail to the entire city to make it look more realistic. And my tip for if you are struggling with adding a lot of detail to your city or to your parks overall, just put on some music, put on maybe like a show of a TV series or even a movie if you have like a second screen or a tablet or even on your phone. I don't know, put on a YouTube video, maybe one of mine, and that just helps as a little bit of a distraction to keep you going. For example, while building, I watched a lot of episodes of Criminal Minds, and I can actually remember which episode I was on when I was building a specific part of the city. And ta-da! Here is your first look at the completed Dominion City. Of course, in the finale, when all of the madness is gonna happen, we're gonna be boots on the ground and we're gonna be right in the middle of it, and you're gonna see all of the details of this city. I hope that you enjoyed this final building episode. If you did, leave a like on the video, and of course, so you don't miss the finale, please consider subscribing to the channel and helping us get to 100,000 subscribers in total. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing. And until next time, enjoy the game.